Hi, this is Tim Hamilton, the co-host of the Maryland Crabs, and I'm here with a crab cake for your listening pleasure. What's a crab cake? Well, it's not quite a full episode, it's just a little snippet. Stay tuned and check it out. Make sure you check us out on themarylandcrabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast or find us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, rate us, iTunes. Go there now. And we're on the line right now with Dr. Tom Muha, who is a psychologist and founder of the Propel Institute here in Annapolis. Dr. Muha?
Good morning, Tim.
We are talking on a rainy morning. The storm's about to roll in. And I am trapped with my wife, my lovely wife, who's a delight, and my two teenage children, who are delights. And I think I am feeling the same way that all Americans are right now, because we've never had anything like this. And I'm feeling a little boxed in, a little caged in, a little edgy, a little irritated. And I assume that I am like everyone else.
Absolutely right. So what happens in the face of a threat is that our body reacts. It's designed to produce stress chemicals to help us ward off the threat, to fight the enemy, to flee to a safe place. The problem is that COVID-19 doesn't exactly require a fight or flight response. It doesn't require that we move our body. In fact, it requires that we stay put. And that is counter to the way our bodies evolved over time. So we need to find other coping mechanisms. Fortunately, our brains have two other pathways that are hardwired in our head other than fight or flight. So, people do get edgy. They do get irritable when they're cooped up. They can feel that anxiety that wants to evoke a flight response. I want out of here. I want to go to the beach. And we see people on TV who want to escape to some place that they think is going to make them feel better. But of course, in reality, they're only fleeing into a situation that could very much put themselves at risk, but probably more likely put their parents and grandparents at risk. Because even if they get the virus, they'll probably survive, where the elders in their family are not likely to have that same positive outcome. Fight or flight's built into us, but we've also got this challenge response as well as a tend and befriend response.
It's an interesting thing to me when I was looking at the protests last week here in Annapolis and in Harrisburg and Lansing, and the politics aside from it, because, it was interesting because it's like everything else in our country has been politicized. But beyond that, I was looking at it and watching the people, and to me, it wasn't the economics. It wasn't the political decisions and the decisions that their elected officials were making so much as I saw people who, like you were just saying, who were panicked. They were saying that they were upset, get us back to work, the economics, and sure, that's the forefront of everyone's mind. But it also seemed to me that these were people who were we've never faced anything like this before, and they were panicking, and they just want this situation to end in a very childlike manner, where they weren't rebelling against their state governments. They were out there kind of facing off on the virus itself, and some of them were in absolute denial about it, which was interesting to me, because the conspiracy theories are like most conspiracy theories, are rooted in pretty much nothing, no evidence. It's just, to me, it seemed like these people were just lashing out in general, and it was interesting to watch.
Well, this is human nature. To evolve into fight or flight. If we're not mindful of our emotions, if we don't find the fear within us, that comes when we're in a very threatening situation, our health is threatened, our livelihoods are threatened. Everyone is rightly afraid of what could happen. And they're right on both sides of the question. They're right to be afraid of the health consequences, but they're also correctly focused on the threat to our well-being. The threat on both sides is palpable. But the difference between a healthy response and not healthy response is that people who have a healthy response see that this is a challenge that instead of a fear-based response, they become proactive rather than reactive. Proactive means they see the outcome that they want to achieve, and they figure out how to get there. And they do it as part of a tribe. So remember, there's the 3 response patterns: fight or flight, challenge response, or tend and befriend. Think about how humans evolved. Yeah, we were under threat, but we had to have our tribe help us, whether we were going to go hunt for food, whether we were going to go to war, or whether we were going to have to move camp because, winter's setting in, we got to move south. It required a tribe we had to pull together with people. And that's what's lacking. And that's what's become so apparent about the divisiveness in our nation now. We're not pulling together. We see these splits, and people aren't working together for everyone's common good. This is bad. Tens of thousands of people are dying. More than 1 million people have gotten this disease in just a few short months. So, yeah, bad situation. But how can we talk to each other about solutions? What's the challenge, and how can we work together to overcome this threat to our well-being? That's what we're needing to be able to do here.
When you talk about the tribalism, I'm kind of thinking, and it's interesting to me watching the folks in the protest, is that it seems to me that they were falling into those kind of primal tendencies that you're talking about, that we have. And they need an enemy to lash out because, our president calls it the invisible enemy, but in this case, it's true, where they don't have a tangible enemy to lash out about. So, they're going to lash out at their government. They're going to lash out at the people enforcing these rules and laying the rules down, because that to them is something that's real. It's something that they can attack. They can't protest a virus. And that seems like we're kind of going primal in those ways. And they did find their tribes, like you said, is it's those groups of people who were at State Circle and waving the flags. They were all united in that day, and they felt like they were doing something. They weren't, but you feel like you have to do something. And in the same way that, I guess, like after 9/11, everyone had to donate blood or had to donate money because they feel like they have to react to something.
Well, you know what? There's truth. That's very true. But the way to think about it is stress gives us energy. And so we can take that energy to protest, to get angry, to blame people. But we can also take that energy to help one another, to figure out what can we do to get to the other side of this. So we can take that energy, and I see people in our neighborhood who are helping with the food drives and helping with the kids who haven't been able to get those free school lunches. And so gathering food and making sure that they get it over to the Stanton Center, make sure the kids are having something to eat. I have a good friend, he's a hero of mine, who works with children who are having trouble reading at a very early age, in the first few years of school. Because if you don't teach them to read in the first few years, then it's all is lost. Well, now it's like, okay, well, we're going to have school online, except that over 3,000 kids in our community don't have internet access.
Yeah, I saw that.
So this, my friend, is figuring out, how can we fix this? We cannot let these children lag behind and never learn to read, because that condemns them for life, because they'll never get an education. And without an education, what kind of life are they going to have? Well, likely one that involves drugs, alcohol, prison. It's not a good outcome. So my friend is like, okay, I'm going to go make a difference in trying to get internet access for some of these young people. That's taking your energy and saying, yeah, this isn't right. This isn't things. People are suffering. But what can I do to help with that? Protesting doesn't help anyone. It might make you feel better temporarily, but you're going to go back home and you're in the same situation, aren't you? You have not actually changed anything. And that's the difference between being reactive and proactive. What's the challenge, and what can you do to help make it better? Maybe it's an elderly neighbor that needs someone to help them bring in groceries. maybe it's a single person who's isolated. Some of the people that I've been talking to who are suffering the most are individuals who live alone. And this social isolation has just really wreaked havoc with their sense of well-being. Maybe you stand on the curb and talk to them while they're sitting on their porch. Connect to people. Think of, who can I help to get through this crisis? Tend and befriend. That's what's going to help us get through it. And then we'll figure out, when we're on the other side of it, how are we going to get everybody back to work? How are we going to pull together and get businesses back open and make a decent living again?
It's interesting. You're talking about the kids and you're talking about the friend and befriend. I'm watching my kids, and they're both, one's 15 and the girl is 16. My daughter's 16. And to her, she's at that age where, she's tribal, and her social circle is more important than anything, than her own family, than everything in her life. And she likes going to school, not for classes, obviously, but because of her tribe that's at school. And what's interesting to me and sad for me is watching the way she's reacting to this is that, I feel like my kids are both, my son is online all the time playing the games, and, he's connecting with other boys, and, they're doing whatever they are on Xbox. And she is doing some of that, but just not touching other people, not hugging, not doing all these things. And I can see her kind of depressed, and I'm not telling tales out of school because I think a lot of people are feeling this way right now, but I'm watching her because she's a perfect example of what's going wrong. And with the kids as well, I've told my wife, I'm like, we really have to stop talking as much as we do about this, what we saw in the news, what the press conference was saying, what the governor was saying, and, these businesses that are going out of business, because, they're sitting at the table listening, and I don't want to shield them from it, but this is kind of all we talk about. And I'm thinking, we're just bombarding them with this, and then they don't have their tribe to fall back on, and they're isolated from that. And that's not natural. And
it is not.
I think the effect it has on kids has got to be more significant than it does for adults.
Well, I'll tell you a story of another 16-year-old who happens to be my granddaughter. Again, isolated from her friends. Sometimes they'll do that front porch thing where somebody's standing on the sidewalk and they talk, or sometimes they'll walk down the street, appropriately distant from one another. But yeah, it's not nearly the same. And so my granddaughter has been doing things around the house. She'll make dinner some nights. She's talking to her parents more. The family dinners, I'm being told have been really wonderful, because all that chat that she'd be doing with her friends, well, parents, that's all she's got right now, right? So my daughter said to her the other day, "This is really wonderful that we've gotten really close going through this together." To which my granddaughter responded, "Well, don't get used to it, because once this is over, you're never going to see or hear from me again."
Yeah, well, my wife and daughter, they're typical, mother-daughter relationship, and under the best circumstances. And it's look, I wouldn't want to be a 16-year-old stuck with my parents for months at a time. And,
that's right.
And so I'm trying to be understanding of it. And I got ticked at her the other day. We had an argument, and I took the phone as punishment. And then it really hit her hard, to the point that, for a day she didn't leave her room. And I thought, what, I overreacted. And I gave the phone back. My wife said, are you giving in? I'm like, what? I can't cut her off from everybody. Like, if she was in school right now, she'd see her friends and she'd talk to them, but she's now completely isolated, and that's cruel. I can't do that.
But that's not exactly true, Tim. She can be adaptive. She's still got her family. And you know what? Those kids at school, those high school kids, maybe she'll see one or two of them 10 years from now. Maybe she won't. But she'll still see her family. She'll see her family for the rest of her life. And so the very definition of resilience is adapting under challenging circumstances. So right now your daughter needs to adapt. So the question I'd have for her is, all right, you got a few more weeks of this. What do you need to do to make the best of it? You need social connection. How can you create positive social connection? Given the limited circle that you have, we call that family, right? Make the best of it for a few weeks, and then you're going to be free as a bird, and you and your friends will get back together. But think about, what do you need to do to adapt now? Because you know what? God willing, this is the worst challenge she ever faces in life, but it is not going to be the last. There will be other challenges that will come to her. As you well know, you've lived a life where you know there's always ups and downs. So teaching her how to be adaptive, to change up, not just get unhappy, not just get down, not get stuck in the negative, but say, all right, what do I need to do to make myself happy, feel good? Adapt to the situation until the situation changes. Then I can move on. That's what we need to be teaching our young people.
So for 30 years, I think you've written a column for the Capitol, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you've developed the Propel principles, the Propel Institute, and I've read your column ever since I've lived here for 22 years, just because you've been very upbeat, you're very positive, and I'm not a pessimist, but I tend towards anxiety and a little towards depression, and so my escape has not generally been positivity. But when I thought about who I'm going to call to talk about this, you were the first person that sprang to mind, not just because you're visible, but I'm like, here's a guy that is just has an element of positivity for every situation. How do you apply these principles to our situation now?
So Propel is an acronym for 6 positive psychology principles. So the first P in Propel is for passion. Passion is when we can see the positive outcome that we want to achieve ultimately. And that actually is the antidote to anxiety and depression. So when we're anxious, we're fearful of it. It's bad and it's going to get worse. When we're depressed, we're not fearful. We're convinced it's going to be bad. So the way to flip your switch in your brain to get out of that is to say, yeah, well, that's possible it could get worse, but it's also possible it could get better. Let me picture that. What will it look like? It has to be a literal picture. What will it look like if this turned out well? What would it look like if my family actually pulled together and we got closer as a result of helping each other get through this? What would that look like? You picture those behaviors. That generates passion. Passion is just the energy to say, that's a good outcome. That's what I want. And I've got energy to try to make it so. The R in Propel is for relationships. Can never accomplish anything alone. So you got to ask yourself, well, who could help me get there? Let me go talk to my wife. Let me talk to the kids. Let me talk to the people that I need to enlist their aid and say, this is my picture. What's your picture? And how can we work together to get there? Then the O in Propel is for optimism. Optimists explain problems situationally. Pessimists blame people, themselves or others. So just say to yourself, all right, here we are, family, we're stuck here at home. Well, how do we need to change this situation? Maybe, for example, we're not eating dinner together. Well, let's change that up. Let's change our situation so that we create opportunities to talk with each other. Maybe we start playing a board game at night. I don't know, but you get people's what would it look like question if we were having better connections? Yeah. And then people change the situation and take action, and that gets them to a much better place. The second P in Propel is for proactive. People who are proactive know and use their strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all misfire. We all get into fight or flight. But we also have great strengths, qualities within us that enable us to be a hero in the story. And so for example, Tim, think when I've been in challenging situations in the past, what were the best traits that I brought to bear that helped me overcome that challenge? For me, it's love of learning. That's one of the reasons I write this column. It's not for you. I keep learning. It helps me to learn and grow. So what are your traits? What has helped you to get through stressful situations? The E in Propel is for energy. How are you going to take care of your body? You got to eat. You got to exercise. You got to burn off those stress chemicals. You got to get enough sleep. You got to take care of your body. And finally is legacy. The L in Propel is for how am I going to make a meaningful difference in other people's lives? If passion is what I want to see for myself, legacy is what do I want to see for other people? And we talked earlier today about, who is that elderly neighbor? Who is that person who lives alone? How can I go make a difference in their life? So that's what Propel is, and that's what I teach people to use in order to have a much more positive and fulfilling life.
It's great to have a framework like that where you can look at a problem and say, okay, here are the 6 slots that I have to fill. and that
That's
you can
right.
do that. And because, with my problems and anyone else's problems, they tend to be just this overwhelming thing that hangs over you like a cloud, and you don't delineate exactly what the problem is and what the solution is. It's easy to get caught up. I fall in that trap where I'm like, well, this sucks and I can't get toilet paper and my family's driving me nuts and, the weather's lousy, and just, it's easy to kind of fall into that trap where it's just negative and you just kind of give up.
That's right.
Like learn helplessness.
It's very easy. Yeah, very easy. And that's why people need to know, well, what do I do? Oh, it starts with passion. I need to picture a positive outcome. Well, what would it look like if the day turned out well in spite of the fact it's all raining? See, that starts opening your mind to possibility thinking. What do you do on a rainy day in order to have something positive happen in your life? Mm-hmm. See, most of the time we don't ask ourselves this question. We don't inspire ourselves. We don't instill and evoke passion within ourselves to say, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to go for that. I'm going to make that happen.
I tried to do something with the kids when they were a little bit younger because they were getting a little bit cynical, maybe not a whole lot. So I said, let's do 3 things at dinner. So you tell me 3 things that were positive during the day. And
yeah, that's great.
And from what I understood was that then trains you, and this is good for adults too, is it trains you to find the good throughout the day. So you're looking for those things.
That's right. It's one of the most powerful interventions you can make. That was great. Good for you.
Well, it lasted for a while, and then they became teenagers and they would just roll their eyes at me. But I know that they think about it. But, it's funny, there's little tools that you can kind of pick up. And the 3 things help me a lot too. And I kind of got out of the habit. And then I find that whenever I get into the habit where I'm a night person. So around midnight, I'll sit down and I'll jot down the 3 good things that happened to me in the day. And at first you feel really hokey doing it, going, this is ridiculous. But then it's true. You start looking for the good things that happen during the day. My wife tends towards pessimism. She grew up in a poor neighborhood in Brooklyn and then moved to a poor town in Appalachia when she was 12. And they had a hard scrabble life. So that's what formed her. I tend to call myself a realist, going, I'm not an optimist or a pessimist. But then I think, in talking to you, maybe I do lean more towards pessimism because I look at the situation. I never think, well, it could turn out good, or, what are the good outcomes that could possibly happen? And I don't think I do that. I think it's easy for people that when they get in this situation, like I just said, with like the learned helplessness, where you see this is a lousy situation. When's it going to end? You feel helpless then. Right. And that's the point.
Right. And when we're helpless and hopeless, that's what leads to depression.
And the exercise is a big thing. I'll tell you, is someone was saying this last night. They said, you're going to either come out of this one of 2 ways when this ends eventually, is you're going to come out kind of, doughy and soft, or you're going to come out like my wife, where absolutely ripped because she works out like for 2 hours a day.
Good for her.
Well, she squeezes it in with work, and I get slammed, and she was like, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty busy. She goes, well, I'm busy too. I'm like, yeah. But your exercise, it's the endorphins, it's the energy, it's everything. And I do feel better when I do it, but it's just having self-discipline.
Well, the best way to do it is just to do it at the same time every day. So for example, my rule is I don't get breakfast until I've done my exercise. So this morning, I watched the little weather. Rain's coming. Well, I can't eat my bowl of cereal. It's, go change, get into your sweats. Geez, I didn't really feel like doing that at 7 a.m, but it's going to start raining soon. And I don't want to wait for breakfast for tomorrow morning. So get up, get going. Come on. And if I just have that habit, then it motivates me. Same thing every day, gets me going.
My brother's lives in Manhattan, and he does personal training on the side because he's chiseled, and he has a biology degree. So he's got the nutrition down, and, he gives me a lot of hints, and
that's good.
And he's great. A couple of things he told me that really sat with me is, one, he said, you give yourself things too easily. He goes, you don't make yourself earn these things. He goes, if you have a couple beers at night, what have you done to earn that physically? He goes, you really have to be hard on yourself, and, you have to earn the nice things in your life. And the other thing that really hit me was, we were talking about motivation, and he said, because on Reddit, the website Reddit, there's a group for motivation that had these motivational for working out and everything. And for business, and it's these little stories and motivational, phrases and everything. And he goes, that's all nonsense. He said, there's no motivation lasts but a day or, a few hours. He goes, that it comes in bursts. He goes, what you're looking for is self-discipline. He goes, motivation is the enemy of self-discipline. You don't want to be motivated. You need to develop self-discipline and he goes, and there's no secret to it. He goes, the secret to self-discipline is make yourself do it.
That's right. It's the power of habit.
Yeah.
Just make yourself go there. If you just make it a habit, something you do every day, same time, same place, same station, then the habit, it's just like for most people brushing their teeth at night. It's like, if I forget and I lay in bed, it's like, oh no, I can't do this. I got to get up and brush my teeth because it's such a deeply ingrained habit. So that's how you want to make exercise. You want to build that in because it burns off the stress chemicals and promotes the good chemicals in your brain that make you feel good. And one of the most powerful, by the way, is a chemical called oxytocin.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's called the cuddle chemical.
That's when you get hugs.
Exactly. When you feel good and close to people. So that would be probably my number one tip. If you're stuck at home, you got to find someone to hug. You got to find someone, to feel close to. That's the way to get through this. If nothing else, we have people who love us and we can really savor that. Hold on to that person 5 seconds and you'll flood your brain with that feel-good chemical.
That's got to be hard if you're single. I guess I never really thought about it because, when you're stuck with your family, you look at your single friends going, God, they're so lucky. But I mean, it's got to be really awful for 6 weeks you're isolated.
Yeah, it's going to work both ways, isn't it? It's either going to enhance your connectedness and affection for one another and admiration for one another as we figure out how to adapt to this, or you're going to allow that negative mindset to seep in, and that's going to keep you edgy, looking for the problems, focused on what's wrong. So we do have a choice to make. I love your friend's attitude. Like, just adopt the mindset of, I am not going to let my brain go to the dark side. I'm going to look for the things that I do appreciate, the things that I am grateful for, the people that I can express affection toward. And it's a choice that I have to make. Both things are there. The question is, which side of the equation do I want to live in? I don't want to stay on the dark side. I want to embrace the things that are positive in my life.
That is great advice. Dr. Muha, you can find more about him and the Propel Institute at propelinstitute.com. And you can read his column. Is that weekly in the Capitol?
It's weekly.
Yeah, weekly.
Every Sunday.
It's a great column. I'm a big fan. I've been a big fan for the 22 years I've been here. I really take your advice to heart, and I can't tell you the number of people who really admire you, and they've talked about how much you've helped them. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking to us about this, and I feel better. I'm going to apply your principles. I'm definitely going to do it so I don't kill my family.
Good. It was great talking to you, Tim.
You too. I want to have you come back, okay?
I would be happy to do that.
All right, Dr. Muha, thank you so much.
Take care.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.